Imagine standing by a campfire in 50,000 BC. No screens, no modern stress. Just you, the dark, and the rising smoke. As it blows right into your face, an ancestor suddenly wonders, what if I did that on purpose? This is how humans truly discovered smoking. Forget modern cigarettes, colonial trade, or tribal ceremonies. We're talking about the very first time someone chose to inhale burning plants, an urge hardwired into us before civilization even began. And the evidence for this is absolutely wild. To understand smoking, we first need fire, and our relationship with it is ancient. The earliest proof of controlled fire dates back 1 million years to South Africa's Wonderwork Cave, where scientists found ash and charred bones from a deliberate indoor hearth. And we weren't even Homo sapiens yet. This was Homo erectus, our smaller-brained, heavy-browed ancestors who pretty much did whatever they wanted. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in smoke. They cooked, stayed warm, and breathed it in daily. There was no escaping it, and obviously no air quality apps. But it wasn't just wood smoke. Burning different plants released a complex cocktail of compounds, including alkaloids and terpenes, and some of those had a very noticeable effect on the human nervous system. Basically, our ancestors were accidentally getting buzzed around the campfire without knowing why. This is a solid scientific theory. Early humans across Africa and Eurasia were regularly exposed to smoke from wild psychoactive plants, including cannabis and early tobacco relatives. It turns out we have an endocannabinoid system that regulates mood, memory, and appetite. Because these brain receptors already existed for our own biology, the first time a human inhaled that smoke, their brain was already primed to receive it. The brain basically said, "Oh, hello, I've been waiting for you." This first accidental inhale is likely the true origin of smoking. It wasn't a master plan, just a pleasant mistake repeated until we started doing it on purpose. Think about that. The multi-trillion-dollar tobacco industry, ancient shamanic medicine, and global social customs may all have started because a tired hunter sat downwind of the wrong burning bush and had a great night. Archaeology points us to 500 BC, about 2,500 years ago, at a burial site in Central Asia's Pamir Mountains. Researchers found wooden braziers with superheated stones and residue of cannabis with exceptionally high THC. This wasn't wild hemp used for rope. This was potent cannabis, deliberately selected and burned for a burial ritual. But ask yourself, does the lack of older physical evidence mean it didn't happen, or just that it didn't survive? Organic materials like leaves and wood rarely last thousands of years. We find million-year-old stone tools because rock is indestructible, but a wooden pipe or a leather pouch of herbs, they rot away in centuries. So in this case, a lack of evidence is definitely not proof that it didn't happen. Then there's the Herodotus problem. In the 5th century BC, the Greek historian Herodotus wrote about the Scythian steppe nomads who took vapor baths. He claimed they threw hemp seeds onto superheated rocks inside small tents and inhaled the smoke, howling with pleasure. For centuries, historians assumed he was exaggerating. But when archaeologists finally excavated Scythian tombs, they found bronze braziers, charred rocks, and hemp residue. It was exactly as described. Herodotus wasn't embellishing. He was just reporting the facts. If anything, he was underselling it. Now let's look at tobacco, the plant most people associate with smoking. Tobacco belongs to the genus Nicotiana and is native to the Americas, meaning the Old World had no idea it existed before the late 1400s. In 1492, when Columbus reached the Caribbean, his journals described a strange sight: indigenous people walking with glowing tubes of dried leaves, inhaling smoke and letting it out through their noses and mouths. Columbus's crew was baffled, but within weeks they tried it themselves because, of course they did. Yet, tobacco use is far older than 1,492. Pipe residues trace it back 3,500 years in the American Southeast. And some researchers believe Amazonian cultivation began up to 10,000 years ago. Crucially, ancient tobacco wasn't a casual habit. It was sacred, reserved for spiritual communication, physical healing, and sealing alliances between tribes. Blowing smoke on someone was a blessing, a gesture of deep respect. For shamans, smoking wasn't a casual break. It was a bridge to the divine. Smoke was seen as a living messenger, carrying prayers up and bringing visions down. This sacred view kept tobacco highly disciplined and ritualized. You didn't abuse it. The concept of tobacco as a casual, everyday habit, something to do on a lunch break or at a bus stop, is a relatively modern European invention. Let's look even deeper to the earliest trace of deliberate smoking in human history. In 2019, in Utah's Great Salt Lake Desert, researchers excavated a 12,000-year-old hearth. Inside, they found seeds of Nicotiana attenuata, a wild tobacco native to North America. This wasn't an accident. The seeds were highly concentrated, proving humans deliberately put them there. This discovery predates regional pipes and pottery by thousands of years, rewriting the timeline of tobacco use. It begs the question, if ancient Americans were burning tobacco 12 millennia ago, what were other global cultures doing with their own local mind-altering plants at that exact same moment? Because 12,000 years ago, humans were everywhere: Africa, Asia, Europe, and Australia. And the drive to alter consciousness is a universal human trait, not just an American one. Which brings us to an idea that sounds wild, but is taken seriously by respected anthropologists: the intoxication hypothesis. The argument is simple. Nearly every culture in history has sought to alter consciousness through fermented brews, mushrooms, or smoke. This behavior is too universal to be an accident. In the 1980s, UCLA psychopharmacologist Ronald Siegel suggested seeking intoxication is a fourth drive, as biological as hunger, thirst, or sex. And it's not just us. Elephants hunt for fermented marula fruit, and Siberian reindeer eat psychoactive mushrooms, even drinking each other's urine because the active compounds pass through intact. Drug recycling reindeer in Siberia. Honestly, respect. But the bigger point is, if this drive is truly that ancient, early humans likely sought out psychoactive smoke long before agriculture, pipes, or pottery existed. They learned through experience that certain plants changed their minds. Maybe they burned them during rituals, or chose campsites near them on purpose. And they had to learn, through trial and deadly error, which smoke made them feel good, and which was lethal. This was high-stakes prehistoric trial and error. Those who survived remembered and shared what they learned. That's how human knowledge worked for most of our history, not through schools or libraries, but through lived experience, passed mouth to ear around a dark campfire. This brings up an overlooked concept: smoking as medicine. Before it was recreational or spiritual, it was likely medicinal. For evidence, we can look to the Ebers Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian medical text dating to around 1550 BC. It describes inhaling smoke from heated plants to treat throat and lung conditions. From a modern perspective, treating lung issues with smoke sounds completely backward, but the Egyptians did it. And it wasn't total madness. The plants they used, like henbane and various aromatics, actually release active chemical compounds when inhaled. The ancient Greeks also used therapeutic smoke. Hippocrates himself wrote about using herbal vapors for lung diseases. To them, the logic was simple. Smoke goes directly to the lungs, making it a direct delivery system for medicine. We still use the lungs to deliver medicine today through inhalers and nebulizers. The inhalation survived. The combustion, thankfully, didn't. Similarly, 3,000-year-old Indian Ayurvedic medicine utilized dhumapana, literally smoke drinking, to inhale herbal compounds through pipes. These texts outlined specific plants and protocols, proving this was a highly refined medical system. From ancient China and Mesopotamia to Greece and India, almost every early civilization used therapeutic smoke. They didn't do it as a trend, they did it because it worked. And in an era without antibiotics or surgery, working sometimes was a highly meaningful bar. But there's another neglected angle to this story: social bonding. Because humans are deeply social creatures, we evolved to survive in groups. Historically, isolation meant death, while group cohesion meant survival. Because of this, anything that built trust had massive evolutionary value. Shared rituals, like consuming mind-altering plants together, are extraordinarily powerful social glues. Experiencing an altered state together builds an irreplaceable sense of connection. Modern neuroscience even confirms this. Shared rituals actually synchronize brain activity and strengthen group identity in measurable ways. So, when ancient groups sat in enclosed spaces inhaling smoke, it wasn't just recreation. It was social technology, vital infrastructure. It built the deep trust needed to face danger together and survive. But here is the uncomfortable part of the history. The shift from sacred ritual to casual habit was a total disaster. When tobacco reached Europe in the 16th century, it spread with a speed that might look all too familiar. Almost overnight, an exotic curiosity became a global obsession. By the 1600s, tobacco was traded worldwide. By the 1700s, powdered snuff was the height of fashion for European royals. By the 1800s, cigars dominated. Then came the early 1900s, and the machine-made cigarette making, smoking cheaper, more convenient, and far more addictive than ever before. A sacred ritual developed over millennia by Native Americans was commercialized into a mass product in just 400 years. In the 1900s, tobacco corporations spent billions hiding the cancer risks of smoking risks. Their own researchers had already verified. They targeted children and paid doctors for endorsements. They even added chemicals to make nicotine hit faster and harder, maximizing addiction. They took an ancient, communal ritual and engineered it to be as physically destructive and financially profitable as humanly possible. A shaman and a tobacco executive used the same plant, but shared nothing else. The gap between a shaman in 500 BC placing cannabis on hot stones for a ritual burial and a 1960s corporate executive targeting teenagers is one of the widest moral gulfs in human history. Both used smoke, but nothing else was the same. So, when did we actually start smoking? The truth is, we don't know, and we probably never will. Physical evidence takes us back 12,000 years and likely much further. But the actual drive behind it, seeking altered states, sharing rituals, and inhaling medicine is undoubtedly far older than any artifact we will ever dig up. It might be as old as fire itself, or the cognitive leap of connecting cause and effect. Looking at a burning plant and thinking, last time I breathed that, I felt different. Let's do it again. That's not addiction, that's intelligence. This behavior predates farming, pottery, and every civilization in history books. By the time written history began, humans globally were already inhaling smoke. Only the specific plants changed. Rituals and purposes shifted, but the behavior was ancient long before written history. There is something poetic about that. Despite everything separating us from our ancestors' modern medicine, the internet, endless digital media, we are still linked by thin, unbroken threads running through 100,000 years of shared human experience. Fire, smoke, breath. Ancient humans breathed the same bonfire smoke we smell tonight. Once they noticed its effects, they chose to inhale it, passing that habit down through generations. It led to Scythians howling with pleasure in their tents, Egyptian doctors prescribing henbane, Mayan shamans reading visions in the haze, and the Taino watching coughing Europeans try tobacco for the first time. So, next time you flip a light switch, sit by a summer fire, or smell wood smoke on a cold night, remember, you're participating in something ancient. You're doing what humans have always done. You're breathing.